National Critics' Choice Award to the Sundaram Tagore Art Galleries, the most admired art gallery of the year. So this is the first one. It's like the Oscars, really, isn't it? The second one, the National Critics' Choice Award, the board is pleased to hereby award, voted by the readers of the National Critics' Choice, Sundaram Tagore, Lifetime Achievement for contributions to international visual and performing arts. Again, we have the National Critics' Choice. The board is pleased to hereby award, voted by the readers of the National Critics' Choice, Poetics of Colour, the best new art film epic documentary, directed by Sundaram Tagore.
I wasn't expecting this, so I didn't know about it. But thank you so much. I'm really touched. And thank you for making this possible.
Hello too. Yes, I've got another one. Okay, so now I'd like to invite you all to feel free to ask Mr. Tagore some questions. You may have questions about the film, about his own journey, and hopefully you'll be able to learn a little bit more as well about his journey, which is quite amazing in itself. So Mr. Tagore, I don't know if you prefer to stand or sit. Does anybody have a question they'd like to present first? I know that Singapore traditionally is a little shy in this area, it's a little like school, but we are in a creative sort of arena, so yes?
So, what inspired you to make the movie, and why did you pick Natwar amongst your various artists that you represent?
Can you hear me? Can you hear? Yeah, okay. I was always interested in making film. At one time, prior to leaving India in 1979, I thought of joining Pune Film Institute, but that never happened because my parents passed away. So I came to the States. So this was something behind sort of always, this idea has been with me for a long time. So the reason is when you're making film is a very expensive affair, and you have to know your topic really well. So when you think about it, so having several galleries and running around the world with art fairs and all the things that you have to do, I needed to find a subject matter that I knew really well. And I had interacted with Natwar for over 15 years, and I knew every single location of that building. I knew, and he was close to me in that respect. But more importantly, I devoted my life to this idea of East-West exchange. And I thought Natwar really represented that, an idea of someone coming from India, and it kind of represents our lives. If you look at it, this idea of diasporic culture, what it means, what's the idea of identity, idea of this kind of living as a trans sort of national. All of these issues which have become very relevant now, we have been affected by that. And so I thought Natwar would be perfect in that sense. So I'm making my second film right now on an American architect who came and worked in the subcontinent. And it's the reverse side of the story. And it's an epic scale, so it's a lot bigger and sort of larger budget. So that's what I'm doing.
Thank you. Yes, another question. I feel like Oprah, this is fantastic.
Why did it take you 5
years? One day I walked into B&H Photo, which is this place where they have this great sort of camera equipment, and people from all over the world flock. And I went and bought all this professional cameras and sound equipment. And 2 years along the line, I was filming. And then I looked at the footage very carefully, and I thought, these are junk, absolutely waste of time. So I literally took 60 or 70 hours of footage, and I garbaged them. And then I went and enrolled in New York Academy of Film, where I got a diploma from there. and I told my staff member not to bother me during that time, and I could show up after 4 o'clock. So that's what I did. I would leave my place around 5, 6 a.m. in the morning, make films until 4, and come home to the gallery and work. And so that once I understood the craft of filmmaking, because you require all these people and you have to know the language and how to work them. Once I understood that, and that's why it took so long.
Yes.
Why did you do art, not music, or some other subject?
Yeah, because I'm interested in the area that I really understand, the compositional art or the visual art is a familiar ground for me. I'm an art historian by training, and that's what I've studied. So I knew I could tackle the topic, and especially to sort of provide a subject and film for the industry. And if you can please the industry, then everyone else is taken care of, because they really understand the language. So on that basis. So in order to make the film, I was, for instance, how do you make the film authentic? How do you provide that sort of language? So I looked at lots of, for instance, I like Satyajit Ray, I looked at Bollywood film, I looked at Wong Kar-wai, I looked at Roberto Rossellini. So in carefully sort of planning, creating a template of the film. If you look at, for instance, in this film, I looked at Satyajit Ray and Bollywood. And even though it has got nothing to do with Bollywood filmmaking, and I'll tell you why. Because in Bollywood filmmaking, every 10 or 15 minutes after this intense dialogue, there's a breakaway into a song and dance. And I said, I would hate all these people, all these authoritative people, in the very, very famous people in the art world, talking about this art, and that feels very, it's like pontificating, you know? They're all talking about it. How do you break away? How do you make it into more a visual sort of a side to the story? So every 3 or so minutes you break away and move into a completely a visual part of the world, and that way that has no sort of words and people are not talking about it. You are transported into a visual world. And very much what I tried to achieve was the way you listen to music. When you listen to music, you're transported to another world. I try to provide that. Whether I'm able to achieve it or not, only you can tell. But in terms of Satyajit Ray, you know, if you look at Satyajit Ray, like if you look at The Home in the World or Charulata, The Lonely Wife, and where the protagonist is smoking, and the smoke sort of weaves around, you know, and the camera will be following that. It's very painterly, very poetic. So when you look at the tools, all the tools were laid out, and there's a musical sort of, and the camera kind of weaves around it, and that's what I try to achieve. So those are kind of things I was trying to get to. Even in the, for instance, I use some of the symbology of the cyclist, the bicyclist sort of reappearing. Is a lonely individual who kind of breaks away from the whole, you know. And then you have a symbology like a door closing, and then the stairway leading up. So that chapter is over, and the struggle to get up to the top. And when the elevator is coming down, the blue colors, I looked at, for instance, there was a diner called Jerry's out there. And that diner kind of reminded me of Edward Hopper's painting, this lonely woman who's sitting and having a cup of coffee. And you know that she may have lost her job, and it's a very introspective world. And I wanted to kind of provide that. So that scene, that blue color of the neon, which was actually orange, I changed it and made it into blue. So those are kind of things that you do as a director.
And over here?
That was a really breathtaking film. Thank you very much. But what I'm also taken by is your title, The Poetic Colors of Nahwasa. Obviously, it indicates your background with your father. My question to you is, where did your poetic romance begin?
Well, you know, as an individual, you're exposed to this world, the world of nature. Where I grew up in India, my parents were really nomadic people. They were artists. My mother was a singer, and every now and then they'll just pull us out of school and take us to the tribal village. For instance, we lived in Chambal, we lived in Bihar, we lived in Orissa, we lived in Assam, and I don't know the reason behind it. For no rhyme or reason, they just left. And so I kind of communed with nature in many ways. So I have a real empathy for people who are from the margins, because I always felt wherever I went, I was in the margin. Whether when I return back to India, I feel I'm an outsider. When I'm in New York, I'm an outsider and an insider. The same way I feel about New York, outsider in India. Now I'm living in Hong Kong, I feel the same way. This constant process of being in the tightrope and kind of treading it lightly, that kind of makes you feel very aware, and there's a kind of poetry to that. There's a kind of romance about that, of being really not from within, but yet you connect with people. It doesn't matter which nationality they are, who they are. You connect with people, purely human sort of relationship, and that empathy that generated from that.
Do we have one more of these? It was a real pleasure to see the film. I've heard about it in the making for many years. As a New Yorker, I also see it's a bit of a love story with New York in terms of the visuals of the city. Where was the Indian footage shot? Was it all over the country, or was it in specific places?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a love affair with New York, because as you know, when you experience that lifestyle, something happens to you. You get transformed in the process. It's happened to him, it happened to all of us who have experienced that. Yes, in terms of footage, there were a few instances where there was a shot from Benares and Agra, and largely it was focused on his own community, which is in Gujarat, that's where he comes from. So we went there with a whole team, and we shot that and went back again. And some of the footage that I shot, but then it's very hard to film something when if you're just filming, that's great, you know. But if you want to direct, you really need to direct the camera person, and the camera person has to be in perfect sync with you. So we shot all over actually, but largely in Gujarat.